Well, well, well. This place looks different. That's right, it's been a while since I continued my very own gacha story arc. However, there is an argument that can be made that I've been covering gacha games the entire time. Anyway, not too long ago, I got approached by Hoyoverse and I got asked, hey, there is a whole new world to explore, a new story to go through, and a very unique character to check out. Would you like to give it a shot? To which I replied, alright, I'll bite. And so here we are, a video that is absolutely sponsored by Honkai Star Rail, but rest assured that I can say whatever I want as we dive back into a game that I hold some nostalgia for. Because I wanna see what exactly changed. Though this time there are gonna be two big differences in how I am playing this game. Because for once, when I dove into Star Rail again, I decided to not stream it. And let me tell you, I could not have made a better decision. For the first time, I actually just enjoyed the game without any pressure from any side. And upon seeing how these games are supposed to be consumed, that's a night and day difference. I don't have to write a story, I don't have to play specific routes, I can just enjoy the game. Also, I tried a new thing and I played the game on PS5, so I just chilled from my couch. And it was fun. What also helped is that since I came back after a break, not only was there a lot of new content to go through, including 2 whole new variations of the simulated universe, and of course a lot of other events that happened and didn't go away, so I can still go there and play them. Thank God! And on top of that, the entire Star Rail anniversary is happening. For the time being, there are just free jades flying everywhere. You get a free 5-star, which happens to be the best support in the game. And with all the accumulated resources that I can just spend, because again, I was on a break, I have to say the experience of getting back into the game is pretty good. Which actually reminds me, with all of these new patches there are always new promotions, and so of course there are new redemption codes and you can use them using the link in the description. Thank you. But of course, if there is one thing that I always appreciate the most, outside of beautiful environments and music, which both of which are still pretty good, it is the story. And so, let's dive into that one. You see, when I took the break, I took it at the end of Penacony. So I was still missing the last story piece of that entire world. And so for me, the story started with learning the fates of Ting Yun as well as Sunday, both of which were a pleasant surprise. I did not expect to get a story for them. But that of course ended up being a setup for the beginning of Amphoreus. Now, when it comes to Amphoreus itself, it already starts with a really cool twist. Because this is a planet that is slightly behind on technology. They are still dealing with cosmic stuff, but they have not exactly figured out space travel. With the key point being, they don't even know that there is a whole universe outside that exists. And since they are not aware of all of these eons and other galactic beings, they just know about the Titans, who are their gods. What's cool is that, very obviously, if you have a look at the environment around, this entire place is based on the Greek mythos. All the design is referencing that, all the names are referencing different people from the mythos, the Titans are used as holy beings, and just like in the Greek mythos, the twist is that the Titans are not actually almighty beings. They have emotions and flaws, just like normal humans. Now, if you take this inspiration from the Greek mythos, it is then cool how it is tied into Star Rail. Because of course, the people on Amphoreus only know about the Titans. But we as the player know that these Titans have to be linked to the eons. And so it's cool to see that this entire universe still has a working system for everything. Anyway, when you begin your journey here, instead of just landing on that world, you actually crash down pretty hard. And you drop into the middle of a combat zone. Here you find weird machines built by the Titans all around you. And they are angry. Here I have to say that the entire introduction through war and battles is really good. But eventually you fight through these creations and you get into the main city, where we dive right into the main twist. Because this is where we learn that the people have no idea that there is a galaxy outside. But we are also prohibited from letting them know. Of course, along the story we do make some mistakes and stuff starts to slip out. And so we face consequences, where we almost die. You then learn that there are Titans who kinda went rogue. And so, in a very classic RPG way, you start assembling a group of heroes. This is the strongest point of the story here. It really feels like you are part of a classic fantasy RPG. And for Star Rail, which is usually full of sci-fi, this is something new. You even get a separate UI for all the stories of the characters who join this big group, who are called the Chrysos Heirs, where the point is that these heroes have the ability to bear the core flame of the Titans. In other words, they can become demigod embodiments of the Titans. So each member of this group pretty much represents one of the Titans. And in its entirety, this is what makes you feel like you are creating a band of superheroes. One that starts by going after the Titan of Strife, known as the Mad King, also known as Nicador. Here we are introduced to Phynon and Midimos, and I'll be honest, Midimos especially is an amazing character. I'm getting some really strong God of War vibes. And in fact, the entire storyline with Midimos being full of hatred towards the Titan and wanting to crush him with his bare hands is amazing. I also really like the part where you put together a small band so you can sneak into the Titan's kingdom, and while the idea was to sneak in and explore, you kinda end up killing everyone as you breach the gates. But eventually we end up fighting the embodiment of Strife. Of course we learn that this is not the real god, but it is still causing mayhem, so we have to stop it, at least temporarily. And so Midimos stays behind to fight the Titan for all eternity. I'll be honest, that scene was amazing. And so, while these two keep fighting, we go to the other Titans for help. Specifically, now the story shifts towards the Titan of Time. So we enter the temple with our main guide being Tribi. And here the story shifts from war into puzzles. A lot of puzzles, and I really wanna say, I'll be honest, compared to Penacony, I really like these. The side-scrolling one is really fun, dealing with the time anomalies is awesome, and controlling the hand is actually fun. So in my eyes, the new puzzles are clever and I like them. But then again, I'm a weird boy who really likes puzzle games. Anyway, by the end of this story arc, we actually get to meet the Titan themselves, which is where the story throws us another curveball. Our main character turns out to be a chosen champion of the Titan of Time. But as we mentioned before, although to the locals these Titans are the gods, we know that they are linked to eons. And so behind the Titan of Time, we have Fuli, who now blessed the Trailblazer with their power. And so just like when we got the Lance of Qlipoth, now we got the frosty powers of Fuli. Now since Fuli is an eon that is all about memories, it is granted to us through an amazing scene where the main character starts seeing some weird memories. Again, if there is one thing Star Rail does well, it is these weird mysteries. And it all ends with the Trailblazer getting Mem, a sort of a spirit of Fuli who acts as the main guide that is connected to the Titans. And so, now being blessed with the powers of the Memory God, eventually we are able to go back into the Kingdom of Strife, where, using the memories, we are able to see what the kingdom looked like before the Titan went mad. And more importantly, using the same memories, which are coming to us with their own embodiment. After going to the place where Midimos was still fighting the Titan, we are able to evoke Nicador's true form, and we are able to kill a Titan. Now I'll be honest, this entire storyline was really good. It was a complete fantasy twist from the sci-fi, and in a lot of places, the voice acting carried it hard.
I am Nicador, the Lance of Fury, the Messenger of Turmoil, and the embodiment of Strife!
Now the thing is, all of this was still only part of 3.0. I know, the story is massive. And still, it wasn't over. Because at the end of 3.0, the game lays out some setups. A surprise I did not expect is that the real Herda came out. And she started tying everything back into the space station. Later we learn this is a setup for 3.2. Because a thing I kinda forgot to mention is that at the very beginning of this entire story, the reason why March didn't go with us on this adventure is because she's suffering from a very strange sickness. One that seems to be heavily linked to Fuli, but right now it is kind of a mystery. And what's kinda cool is that this story beat with Herda also threw in an update for Sunday. But the story then quickly went back to Amphoreus, where the last bit happened. You see, after Strife was defeated, they had to pick someone who would bear the core flame of the Titan. And so the decision was between Midemos and Phynon. But ultimately, Phynon stepped up to go through the trial. And that's how 3.0 ends. Overall, a really good start to a new world. And so 3.1 immediately picks up after this. The group of heroes is worried because Phynon has been gone for a while, and so naturally we enter the trial after him. Inside we learn that the trial is all about war and bloodshed, with all of this acting as a device for us to learn about Midemos' past. Because it turns out his entire bloodline is linked to the Titan of Strife, where they are all just killing each other for glory and succession, which of course led into Midemos hating those traditions. So naturally, he also hated the Titan of Strife who started all of this. That's where all the hate is rooted. And so while this is all here to set up Midemos' story, once again there is a twist. Because inside the trial we do find Phynon, but in the middle of all the fighting he stabs us, and that's how we get back to the present times. Now, I'll be oversimplifying the story, but we learned that outside of Strife going mad, there is also a separate threat known as the Black Tide, which is sort of spreading around, and we learn it is all tied to the growth of the Titan of Reason. On top of which there happens to be a mysterious assassin that is going after important people. And eventually, a few really cool scenes later where Tribby saves a lot of people, the assassin happens to claim one of Tribby's fragments. In short, Tribby is a hero who got blessed by Janus, the Titan of Time, but that was done at the cost of her soul splitting into 1,000 fragments, where all of them are aging backwards, and at the end only one fragment is destined to remain. And well, after 997 fragments died, the assassin happened to claim one more. Here I really wanna highlight that one creepy scene with Tribby that was setting all of this up. I did not know that Star Rail can actually do horror well. But later we learned that there is a new character called Professor Anaxa who is involved in the events of the Grove. Though before that, there is one more twist that happens. Phynon gets out of the Trial of Strife, and Midemos enters in. But then this part ends with it being revealed that Professor Anaxa alchemically tied the Titan of Reason to his body. In other words, blasphemy. The assassin is revealed to be a reaper from the Black Tide of Death. With Casteris, the character blessed with death itself behind our back, we just decide to face it. As that happens, Midemos successfully finishes the Trial of Strife and he becomes the embodiment of Strife. And as the new King of Kremnos, he just annihilates everyone. I'll be honest, that scene might be the most badass scene that Star Rail had seen yet. It was amazing. So, after defeating it, the story of 3.1 ends with what almost seems to be a funeral for the Tribby fragment, but in reality it is all just a setup for 3.2. And so now, I know there is a lot of people who have not done the story of 3.2 yet, and so I don't want to spoil it. But let me give you a very spoiler-free review. God damn, I understand everything now. Simply said, sure, Casteris might be the coolest character of this world. And now I absolutely understand why all the marketing and all the focus is around her character. It's because her story is really cool and really interesting, her gameplay is a spectacle, and she might absolutely be the main character of Amphoreus. In short, 3.2 has two sides. There is Professor Anaxa, who is doing his alchemical experiments, and who wants us to get rid of death by soul transmutations. And then there is Casteris, who is kinda death incarnate. These two act as two opposing driving forces of the story. And oh boy, they drive it well. During the story there are quite a few impactful scenes. It's points where the story beats are incredibly powerful. For example, there is a point where you start learning that Casteris just kills everyone she touches. Which was true ever since she was a child. Meaning, she's a very depressed person. But on top of that, after people learned about her powers, they all wanted to use her as an executioner. Again, this started when she was a child. And during the Archon quest, there is even a part where you get to play as Casteris as you are executing people who are on a death row. Let me tell you, they don't play around with the darkness of this story in this patch. Because there she got abducted by people who enjoyed death, And they all wanna meet her, but of course she refuses because she does not wanna just constantly take away lives. And so this psychological trauma just gives this such a good twist. And so again, without spoiling anything major, just know that as much as I loved Mighty Mouse in 3.0, Casteris is just steamrolling everything now. And so if you tie it all together, the story from 3.0 to 3.2 is simply really good. The story of the Titans is great. The fantasy of assembling the heroes works. And getting a fantasy world in a sci-fi setting is refreshing. But this all comes with a darker side. Of course, nothing is perfect, and so there is something we have to mention. It's just that these stories are long. Every patch is about 8 to 10 hours, which is a lot. Especially if you are like me and you just wanna take it all in. Yeah, oh boy, there is quite a lot of fluff that could be cut down. Then again, this is absolutely subjective, and it's funny to see that the biggest flaw of the story is that there is too much story. But in my opinion, the ideal length would be like 4 to 6 hours. And in most cases, I would argue that the story can be cut down to that length. So despite this, I would say there is some great time to be had in this story. And that brings us to an entirely different side. Because knowing how important Casteris is for this entire patch, we absolutely have to talk about her gameplay, because remember, she did become a playable character. In short, Casteris is a DPS carry who is backed up by something special. Something really big and really special. Yep, she literally has a giant nether dragon of death. And when that dragon breathes, oh boy, it breathes the end of the world. I have not seen a crazier ability in this game. And it might actually be the most power fantasy thing we've had. On top of which, it looks amazing. But on top of this, on top of her summoning her own deathly dragon, Casteris is also special because she introduces a whole new mechanic. Which has its good side and also potentially a bad side. You see, Casteris has a special passive ability that makes it so that when one of your teammates dies, they get a small 1-round window where, if they are healed, they get resurrected. It's an effect that can trigger once per battle. Which is cool! Thematically, this absolutely fits someone who is an incarnation of death. But the twist is that this passive is also available when you own Casteris, but she is not on your team, making it sort of a permanent passive. The reason why this is cool is because this absolutely plays into the entire theme of Amphoreus. The entire story is about assembling heroes. And so having a hero that actively enhances the fellowship feels good. After getting her, you really feel like your group is better. On top of this, this specific passive is not that strong, because if one of your characters dies, then you've proven you don't have the healing check for the fight, and so the likelihood is you will die the next cycle anyway, unless there are specific circumstances where you just really want a glass cannon through a fight. So for the most part, here we are still talking about more of a flavor passive. However, the potentially bad side is that this technically opens up the door for possible power creep. Because now that we know that permanent passives can be a thing, well, what happens if in the future there is a character who just permanently buffs everyone with something really strong? That could very quickly become a problem. So Hoyoverse has to be really careful with this Pandora's box, which they've already opened. But regardless, again, adding all of this together, I am now starting to understand why Hoyoverse invited me to check out this current patch. I mean, look, I like the Greek mythos. I like the fantasy of mortals fighting titans. I do like the new character that has an entire deathly dragon. On top of which there is also gorgeous environment, and yes, I would say the puzzles are really fun. And you know what, I could possibly talk another half an hour about the environment alone. And especially we could talk about all the tech that is hidden behind this. So for now, I'm just happy I got a chance to continue my little gacha story arc. But given the circumstances, have I really ever left?